Hello everybody. Today we're going to review aux input tracks and how you can use them to add reverb to your sessions. Now what I've done here is I've created a mono aux input track down here, and you can do that by going up to Track, New, and selecting Create One Mono aux input track in Samples. So now I've just created a second one, but I'm going to delete that since we already have one here. Now an aux input track is simply a way to route signals within Pro Tools. They're kind of like virtual wires and virtual signal paths within Pro Tools, so you can get signal from one place to another, because Pro Tools really is like a virtual mixing console. So it has similar characteristics as a regular mixing console, like it'll have auxiliary sends and auxiliary returns, things like that. So an aux input is analogous to an aux return on a traditional mixing console that you'd see in a studio. But for now, what we're going to do is tell the aux input fader where it's getting its signal from, because we can't just take audio tracks and move them into here. You can't just drag it down into the aux input track, because the aux is simply a signal path for signals that are already playing through Pro Tools. So what we have to do here is go up here and select I/O so we can see the input-output for each of these. Now for each of our audio tracks, we can select an input from, say, our audio interface. But down here, what we want to do is, instead of choosing an input from our audio interface, we want to actually select a bus interface. And these buses that you choose here are virtual signal paths within Pro Tools. And we're just going to go ahead and select bus 1. What this means is this aux input track is now being fed from bus 1. Now, in order to send something to these virtual signal buses within Pro Tools, we have to choose something that can go out to it. Now, for example, with our electric guitar, let's go back here, and we're going to select sends to show the sends portion here. What we can do with a send, as we discussed, a send is simply a copy of this audio channel. So it's going to send, during playback, a copy of that same audio that's playing out another virtual wire, if you will. So we can go here and select a send, select bus 1, and now we have this fader that pops up. Okay, so this fader, if we turn this up or down, determines how much of this audio track, this electric guitar, is it sending to this virtual signal path within Pro Tools, this bus 1. So if we turn it up, it's going to send more signal out to bus 1. If we turn it down, it's going to send less signal down to bus 1, obviously. So let's show this during playback. Now with this fader all the way down, you can see there's no signal going here. But as I turn this up, it's now sending more of the electric guitar out bus 1, and you'll see this aux input, which is being fed by bus 1, now has more signal. So as I turn up this send, you're going to see more signal in this aux 1. Now you're going to also hear the volume turn up a little bit, because this aux input track, which is being fed from bus 1, is outputting of our standard master mix. So we're basically just sending a copy of the same thing out to bus 1. This is picking up from bus 1 and adding it back in. So we're basically doubling the track here, which isn't really something we'd necessarily want to do all the time. But what makes this powerful is we go back up here again, and we can show inserts. These insert points are our plugins. If we use a plugin on our aux input track, for example, we're going to use a plugin, Reverb. We're just going to use Deverb Mono right now. Now, this aux input track is processing everything it's getting over bus 1, sending it through a reverb, and then back out. So let's hear the difference now. You can definitely hear the reverb on that electric guitar. In fact, we're going to solo this and the aux input track so you can hear a little bit better. So right now we're only listening to this aux input and the electric guitar by use of the solo button. And by using this aux send fader that we have here, we can turn this down to adjust how much level is being sent to this reverb unit here through the aux input. So if we turn this down, we have no reverb. And if we want a little bit more reverb, you just add a little bit more. If we really want a ton of reverb, then we can just crank it all the way up. Or maybe we just want it somewhere in between. So again, you're going to have to adjust these to see how it fits in your mix. So let's unsolo these and see how it sounds. So you can hear that, or you can also mute this track, hitting the M button to mute it to see what it sounds like without it. Sounds kind of dry, so let's put it back in and see what it sounds like. So you can hear that in there. So again, this fader here, which is attached to our bus 1 output send from our individual channel, that controls how much it's sending to this aux input, which is being fed by bus 1. And so everything here is being processed through this reverb unit, and that's what's adding back into our main mix output. And that's how we get reverb. Now, we can also do that for other channels. For example, here, we can send bus output 1 on here for the piano, and we can add reverb to the piano. So let's solo the piano, and we're also going to solo the aux input fader. And let's add some reverb here. And again, you just add as much or as little as you want to the mix. Again, you can just click on the fader that you want to control, and then that becomes the fader for the reverb that you want there. And that's a real simple way to add reverb to a mix. So we add an aux input fader, add a plugin, a reverb plugin, set the input to bus 1. We'll keep the output as output 1 and 2. And for each audio track that you want to have reverb to, just simply add an aux send to that bus. Okay, so right now we've just been doing mono reverb. Let's go back here and show you a little trick, because when we first started, we created a mono aux input fader, right? Well, what we can do is if we hit Command = to get over to our mix window, you'll see that there's simply 1 meter here because it's a mono aux. It's a mono aux fader. You can pan it left or right. But what you can do with certain plugins, and Reverb happens to be one of them, you can actually take this plugin and with this mono/stereo option, what it does is it takes a mono input, track, so it'll take a single bus 1 input, but it will create a stereo output. So this creates a stereo reverb, which will give you a little more space, and it just generally sound a little better, especially, well, if you're creating a stereo mix, which I'm assuming you're probably going to be doing. So again, all I did there is I clicked on the little button to the left of the plugin there and selected the mono/stereo instead of the mono option there. And that turns my mono aux input track into a stereo output, but mono input. So stereo out, mono in. Now, just to show you the difference between this and a stereo aux input fader, let's create a little bit more room here in our mix window. I'll close out that window right now. So I'm going to go to Track, New. This time I'm going to create a stereo aux input track. I'm going to create that. Let's rename this stereo aux, and this one mono aux. Okay, now this is a mono input, so it's bus 1 and with a stereo output because the plugin is making this a stereo output. But now this, without any plugins, it's a stereo output. But here, it's a stereo input as well. So here, instead of just selecting bus 1 or bus 2 or bus 3, you actually have to choose a pair of buses to feed this aux input channel. So let's say, for instance, this will be bus 3 and 4. Now the reason I like to do this mono aux channel with a stereo processor is that for each of these, like electric guitar over here, I can just simply select one single bus output to send to our reverb. Okay, but if I wanted to send it to, for example, let's create a reverb, a stereo reverb here on our stereo aux channel, which is this guy right here. If I wanted to send it there, I would have to send a bus to outputs 3 and 4, both of them together. Now it's really, I guess, not that big of a deal, but what it ends up doing for a mono audio track is now you're taking up 2 signals within Pro Tools to actually get to that reverb. So, you know, it's really kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other, whichever one you really prefer. It's probably going to have the same effect, but in any event, so here I have a send on bus 1, which is sending the signal to this aux input track here, and I can also select bus 3 and 4, so I also have a separate output to feed the stereo bus. So let's play this back and check it out. So on bus 1 here, I have this up and it's sending out to this reverb over here. I'm going to turn that down here. Now I'm going to select bus 3 and 4 and I can turn this one up here. So you can hear that stereo reverb. I'm going to turn that down again. Select bus 1 and turn this up and down. So let's listen to the difference between that mono and the stereo reverb. I'm going to go back here to our mono track and change this plugin back to our original mono. And let's have a listen real quick. Okay, and as it's playing, I'm going to change this back to a stereo. So I think immediately, especially if you have headphones on, you can tell the difference, that it really makes a dramatic difference in your mix. Just that stereo reverb sound really opens things up. So generally speaking, you're definitely going to want to use the stereo plugin, whether or not you use a mono aux input or a stereo aux input. You know, for now, you know, really it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other, as long as you're feeding the aux properly. Because something that you can do with a stereo aux input track is that, you know, here we chose bus 3 and 4, but you could just simply choose mono bus 3. Okay, now what happens there? So if you're listening carefully over your headphones, we're just sending it to bus 3, which is the left side of this input. Now the stereo reverb is actually going to create a stereo output, but if you listen, it's really left heavy in terms of where the reverb is, because we're only sending it to the left side of this input. Now the reverb is processing it and it's sending out stuff over both channels, but still, if you listen, it's going to be pretty heavy on the left side of reverb. So listen to that again. So you can see the reverb is still outputting signal across both the left and the right, but the left is definitely higher than the right. And as you listen to that reverb, it definitely hits on the left side a little hard. So when you're dealing with stereo reverbs and stereo buses and things like that, you just want to make sure that you're doing exactly what you want. So again, just be careful. If you're feeding a stereo aux input, you may want to use a stereo aux send as opposed to just sending one of the buses. So you want to send both. So again, just be cognizant of that option.